All right. Looks like I am live. So I'm just going to sort of do a little bit of an opening about Bresson. Tell me if you can hear me okay. I'm just going to do a little bit of an opening about Bresson as I wait for some more people to get in. And let's see here. Let me just check my OBS. Okay. So about a year ago, I would say, I think a year, maybe 2 years ago. Time is just weird right now, but a little while back, I made a video on Bresson. Bresson is probably my favorite film director of all time. He's definitely my top five, at least top three, easily. Bresson, Kieślowski, and Terrence Malick, I would say, are probably my top three film directors of all time. So I've and Tarkovsky's up in my top five as well. Bresson has a very distinct approach to filmmaking that you don't see in other filmmakers. He likes to use non-actors. He doesn't like them to act. He tries to shoot everything as flat as possible. And the whole idea behind his style of filmmaking, he also doesn't use like a traditional soundtrack. He was very avant-garde for his time. The reasoning is that he comes from the world of painting. He looked at the painter Cézanne, who was a very prominent, was an impressionist painter. I've seen several of his work. If you go to the Musée d'Orsay, you'll see some work by Cézanne. He saw Cézanne and he said, "Well, I don't think that I can bring painting basically any further." So he looked, and this was in like the 1930s. He looked to the world of film. So he became a filmmaker actually when he was quite old. I think he was like he was like 40 when he became a filmmaker. He made a comedy in the 30s that really is kind of like semi-lost. I mean, there's bits and pieces of it, but not like a very good restoration of it is available. And then in the 40s, he made Angels of Sin, Les Anges du Péché. And that's kind of a studio movie, but really he sort of broke through as a director with his film Les Dames du Bois de Boulogne, which is a sort of romance drama, very excellent film. But even then, that wasn't the Bresson that we kind of know and love now. The Bresson that we know and love really started with Diary of a Country Priest, which he released in 1950. And you see echoes of Diary of a Country Priest even now. If any of you have seen First Reformed, that borrows a lot from Diary of a Country Priest. The narration style, even the kind of character is very similar. I know a lot of people are joking that First Reformed is essentially Diary of a Country Priest mixed with Winter Light. But anyways, a lot of people mistake Bresson for being a French New Wave director. He's not. He definitely influenced the French New Wave directors. He was making films at the same time. In Pickpocket, the film that Paul Schrader... so Paul Schrader basically takes the ending of Pickpocket and uses that like in all of his movies. But Pickpocket is not a French New Wave film. It was made at around the same time as the French New Wave, but it's very Bressonian. It's basically a kind of loose adaptation of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. But anyways, Bresson was a very interesting figure. I believe he also fought in World War II. It was French. I could be wrong about that part. He had a career of making increasingly sort of more, I don't want to say esoteric, but increasingly his films became more and more his sort of theoretical, more and more like in line with his theoretical style of like what he considered a pure film. So in the mid 20th century, you had some directors, Tarkovsky was one, Bresson was another, who basically were trying to philosophically separate cinema from other art forms. So they're trying to separate it from literature, from painting, from theater, from photography. And while he was making movies, Bresson took down notes, and so the notes consist of some just everyday thoughts, some philosophical musings, thoughts on movies that he saw, some things that he learned on film sets, very basic stuff like this. But as a whole, when you start to look at it as a whole, so this is the book, Notes on the Cinematograph. Highly recommend you get it. It's like $15 on Amazon. I mean, it's so easy to read. I'm going to read it. It's basically, if you look at it right here, it's almost like reading his Twitter. It's like going through his Twitter history. And it's like his films, and Tarkovsky's book is also like his films, where there's a lot of musing, there's a lot of rambling. Sometimes it goes on long, but there's, a lot of deep meaning in there. And with Notes on the Cinematograph, it's also very much like a Bresson film, in that it's a lot of little pieces that maybe they don't mean a whole lot by themselves, but when you step back and you look at it like a painting, like how you're supposed to look at a Bresson painting, there's a lot to sort of take away from it. So without further ado, let me get to chat just really fast. Hey guys, how you doing? How's this Tuesday afternoon going for you? I'm seeing a lot of new names as well as old names in here. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, you watched A Gentle Woman. Yeah, that's one that's actually a little bit harder to find. So his 1970s films, which is Four Nights of a Dreamer, A Gentle Woman. Well, Gentle Woman, I think that's 1970. And Four Nights of the Dreamer was after that. Lancelot of the Lake and The Devil Probably. Those movies are quite difficult to find right now. I had to go through so many processes. Now, I remember I found them. I think I rented them on DVD at a place in South Pasadena called Videotech. That's where I was able to watch those initially. And I think that The Devil Probably, which is his most like doomer-pilled movie, just got a 4K restoration. So hopefully that's going to be coming out later this year. So hopefully that's going to be coming out later this year, and that is definitely Bresson's whatchamacallit, most like literally me movie. No, I don't know which company restored it. Oh, you're on a cinema marathon. You're on the 1910s. Dude, watch Charlie Chaplin, The Kid. The Kid is great. Watch anything by D.W. Griffith. I mean, D.W. Griffith, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, but his movies are important to at least watch and understand. So, and there's plenty of good German expressionist films from that time as well. And yeah, definitely look at also like world cinema. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out of Europe in the 1910s. And, there's a lot of cool short films. And yeah, Charlie Chaplin, like, you kind of can't go wrong with Charlie Chaplin. Those are good stuff. Devil Probably is literally me, but I'm the seal. Yeah, that is the movie that has seal clubbing in it. But anyways, guys, without further ado, this should probably be like an hour of reading. So I'm just going to read this, and then I'm going to get to talk in the chat. So if you have super chats or anything like that, I'll get to that. I'll get to that like right after I finish reading, and we'll just kind of hang out today. And all right, so I guess without further ado, let's get to it. Notes on the Cinematograph. So this first selection of notes is between 1950 and 1958. This is when he was making films like Diary of a Country Priest and A Man Escaped. Because I think Pickpocket was 1959. Rid myself of the accumulated errors and untruths. Get to know my resources. Make sure of them. The faculty of using my resources well diminishes when their numbers grow. Master precision. Be a precision instrument myself. Not have the soul of an executant of my own projects. Find, for each shot, a new pungency over and above what I had imagined. Invention, parentheses, reinvention, on the spot. Metteur en scène, director. The point is not to direct someone, but to direct oneself. No actors, no directing of actors, no parts, no learning of parts, no staging, but the use of working models taken from life, being models instead of seeming actors, as regards to human models. Movement from the exterior to the interior. Actors' movement from the interior to the exterior. The thing that matters is not what they show me, but what they hide from me, and, above all, what they do not suspect is in them. Between them and me, telepathic exchanges, divination. Around 1925. The talkie opens its doors to theater, which occupies the place and surrounds it with barbed wire. Two types of film. Those that employ the resources of the theater, actors, direction, etc., and use the camera in order to reproduce. Those that employ the resources of cinematography and use the camera to create. The terrible habit of theater. Cinematography is a writing with images and movement and with sounds. A film cannot be a stage show because a stage show requires flesh and blood presence. But it can be, as photograph theater or cinema is, the photographic reproduction of a stage show. The photographic reproduction of a stage show is comparable to the photographic reproduction of a painting or of a sculpture. But a photographic reproduction of Donatello's St. John the Baptist or of Vermeer's Young Woman with Necklace has not the power, the value, or the price of that sculpture or that painting. It does not create it, does not create anything. Cinema films are historical documents whose place is in the archives, how a play was acted in 19 whatever by Mr. X, Miss Y. An actor in cinematography might as well be in a foreign country. He does not speak its language. The photograph theater or cinema requires a metteur en scène or director to make some actors perform a play and to photograph these actors performing the play. Afterwards, he lines up the images. Bastard theater lacking what makes theater? Material presence of living actors, direct action of the audience on the actors. Without lacking naturalness, they lack nature. Chateaubriand. Nature, what the dramatic art suppresses in favor of a naturalness that is learned and maintained by exercises. Nothing rings more false in a film than that natural tone of the theater copying life and traced over studied sentiments. To think it more natural for a movement to be made or a phrase said like this than like that is absurd, is meaningless in cinematography. No possible relations between an actor and a tree. The two belong to different worlds. A stage tree simulates a real tree. Respect man's nature without wishing it more palpable than it is. No marriage of theater and cinematography without both being exterminated. Cinematographers film where expression is obtained by relations of images and of sounds, and not by mimicry done with gestures and intonations of voice, whether actors or non-actors. One that does not analyze or explain, that recomposes. An image must be transformed by contact with other images, as is a color by contact with other colors. A blue is not the same blue beside a green, a yellow, a red. No art without transformation. The truth of cinematography cannot be the truth of theater, not the truth of the novel, nor the truth of painting. What the cinematographer captures with his or her own resources cannot be what the theater, the novel, painting capture with theirs. Cinematographers film where the images, like the words in a dictionary, have no power and value except through their position and relation. If an image, looked at by itself, expresses something sharply, if it involves an interpretation, It will not be transformed on contact with other images. The other images will have no power over it, and it will have no power over the other images, neither action nor reaction. It is definitive and unusable in the cinematographer system. A system does not regulate everything. It is a bait for something. Apply myself to insignificant, parentheses, non-significant images. Flatten my image as if ironing them, without attenuating them. On the choice of models, this is a new subject. His voice draws from me his mouth, his eyes, his face, makes for me his complete portraits, outer and inner, better than if he were in front of me, the best deciphering God by the ear alone. On looks. Who said a single look lets loose a passion, a murder, a war? The ejaculatory force of the eye. To set up a film is to bind persons to each other and to objects by looks. Two persons, looking each other in the eye, see not their eyes but their looks. The reason why we get the color of a person's eyes wrong? ? On two deaths and three births. My movie is first born in my head, dies on paper, is resuscitated by the living persons and real objects I use, which are killed on film, but placed in a certain order and projected onto a screen, come to life again, like flowers in water. To admit that X may be, by turns Attila, Muhammad, a bank clerk, a lumberman, is to admit that the movies in which he acts smack of the stage. Not to admit that X acts is to admit that Attila equals Muhammad equals a bank clerk equals a lumberman, which is absurd. Applause during X's film. The impression of theater, irresistible. So when it says X in here, just as a side note, I believe that's redacted. That in his notes he was talking about a very specific movie or a very specific person, but it's just redacted so that there wasn't drama afterwards or something like that. A model, enclosed in his mysterious appearance, he has brought home to him all of him that was outside. He is there, behind that forehead, those cheeks. Visible parlance of bodies, objects, houses, roads, trees, fields. To create is not to deform or invent persons and things. It is to tie new relationships between persons and things which are and as they are. Radically suppress intentions in your models. To your models, don't think what you're saying, don't think what you're doing, and also, don't think about what you say, don't think about what you do. Your imagination will aim less at events than at feelings, while wanting these latter to be as documentary as possible. You will guide your models according to your rules, with them letting you act in them, and you letting them act in you. One single mystery of persons and objects. Not to use two violins when one is enough. Shooting. Put oneself into a state of intense ignorance and curiosity, and yet see things in advance. One recognizes the true by its efficacy, by its power. Passionate for the appropriate. Expressive face of the actor on which the slightest crease, controlled by him and magnified by the lens, suggests the exaggerations of the kabuki. Counter the high relief of theater with the smoothness of cinematography. The greater the success, the closer it verges upon failure, as a masterpiece of painting approaches the color repro. What happens in the joins, the great battles, General de M. used to say, are nearly always begun at the points of intersection of the staff maps. Cinematography, a military art. Prepare a film like a battle. A whole made of good images can be detestable. On true and false. The mixture of true and false yields falsity, photograph theater or cinema. The false, when it is homogeneous, can yield truth, theater. In a mixture of true and false, the true brings out the false hinders belief in the true, an actor simulating fear of shipwreck on the deck of a real ship battered by a real storm. We believe neither in the actor nor in the ship, nor in the storm. On music. No music as accompaniment, support, or reinforcement. No music at all. And then there's a thing that says, except, of course, music played by visible instruments. The noises must become music. Shooting. No part of the unexpected which is not secretly expected by you. Dig deep where you are. Don't slip off elsewhere. Double, triple bottom to things. Be sure of having used to the full all that is communicated by immobility and silence. Draw from your models the proof that they exist with their oddities and their enigmas. You should call a fine film the one that gives you an exalted idea of cinematography. No absolute value in an image. Images and sounds will owe their value and their power solely to the use to which you destine them. Model. Questioned by the gestures you make, the words you make them say. Response. Even when it's only a refusal to respond to something which often you do not perceive but your camera records, submitted later to study by you. On automatism. Automatism. 9/10 of our movements obey habit and automatism, not autism. Like automatically doing things. I could be saying it wrong, putting the inflection on the wrong thing. It is anti-nature to subordinate them to will and to thought. Models who have become automatic, everything weighed, measured, timed, repeated 10, 20 times, and are then dropped in the medium of the events of your film. Their relations with the objects and persons around them will be right, because they will not be thought. Models automatically inspired, inventive. Your film, let people feel the soul and the heart there, but let it be made like a work of hands. Cinema draws on a common fund. The cinematographer is making a voyage of discovery on an unknown planet, where not everything is present, but each word, each look, each movement has things underlying. Significant that X's film, shot at the seaside on a beach, breathes a characteristic smell of the stage. To shoot extempore with unknown models is in unforeseen places of the right kind for keeping me in a tense state of alert. Let it be the intimate union of the images that charges them with emotion. Catch instance, spontaneity, freshness. How hide from oneself the fact that it all ends up on a rectangle of white fabric hung on a wall? See your film as a surface to cover. X is imitating Napoleon, whose nature was not to imitate. In Redacted, a film that smacks of the theater, this great English actor keeps fluffing to make us believe he is inventing his lines as he goes along. His efforts to render himself more alive do just the opposite. A too expected image, cliché, will never seem right, even if it is. Set up your film while shooting. It forms for itself knots of force, of security, to which all the rest clings. What no human eye is capable of catching, no pencil, brush, pen of pinning down, your camera catches without knowing what it is, and it pins it down with a machine's scrupulous indifference. Immobility of X's film, whose camera runs, flies. A sigh, a silence, a word, a sentence, a din, a hand, the whole of your model, his face in repose, in movement, in profile, full face, an immense view, a restricted space. Each thing exactly in its place, your only resources. A flood of words does a film no harm, a matter of kind, not quantity. It would not be ridiculous to say to your models, I'm inventing you as you are. The insensible bond connecting your furthest apart and most different images is your vision. Don't run after poetry. It penetrates unaided through the joins, ellipses. X, an actor, uncertain like an uncertain color made from two tones superimposed. On the boards, acting adds to real presence, intensifies it. In films, acting does away with even the semblance of real presence, kills the illusion created by the photography. Around 1954. The Grand Prix lunch. One-eyed man in the kingdom of the willfully blind. Where is my judgment fled that censures falsely what they see aright? Let it be the feelings that bring about the events, not the other way. Cinematography. New way of writing, therefore, a feeling. Model. Two mobile eyes and a mobile head, itself on a mobile body. Don't let your backgrounds, avenues, squares, public art, and subway, absorb the faces you are applying to them. Model. Thrown into the physical action, his voice, starting from even syllables, takes on automatically the inflections and modulations proper to his true nature. In every art, there is a diabolical principle which acts against it and tries to demolish it. An analogous principle is perhaps not altogether unfavorable to cinematography. Forms that resemble ideas, treat them as actual ideas. Model. All face. Shooting. Topic on shooting. Wonderful chances, those that act with precision. Way of putting aside the bad ones to attract the good ones, to reserve for them in advance a place in your composition. Actors, costumes, sets, and stage furniture are bound to make one thing at once of the stage. Bound to make one think at once of the stage. Take care that the persons and objects in my film may not make people think at once of the cinematographer. Someone who can work with minimum can work with the most. One who can work with the most cannot, inevitably, with the minimum. Shooting. Stick exclusively to impressions, to sensations. No intervention of intelligence which is foreign to these impressions and sensations. The power your flattened images have of being other than they are. The same image brought in by 10 different routes will be a different image 10 times. Neither the director nor the scenario writer forget you are making a film. Actor, the to and fro of the character in front of his nature, forces the public to look for talent in his face instead of the enigma peculiar to each living creature. No intellectual or cerebral mechanism, simply a mechanism. If on the screen the mechanism disappears and the phrases you have made them say, the gestures you have made them make, have become one with your models, with your film, with you, then a miracle. Unbalance so as to rebalance. Hide the ideas, but so that people find them. The most important will be the most hidden. Acting what seems to have an existence of its own, apart outside the actor, to be palpable. On poverty. Letter of Mozart's, about some of which his own concertos, they hold the happy mean between the too difficult and the too easy. They are brilliant, but they miss poverty. Montaigne. The movements of the soul were born with the same progression as those of the body. Unusual approaches to bodies. On the watch for the most imperceptible, the most inward movements. Not artful, but agile. Sudden rise of my film when I improvise, decline when I execute. Cinema seeks immediate and definitive expression through mimicry, gestures, intonations of voice. This system inevitably excludes expression through contacts and exchanges of images and of sounds and the transformations that result from them. What has passed through one art and is still marked by it can no longer enter another. Impossible to express something strongly by the coupled resources of two arts. It is all the one or all the other. Not to shoot a film in order to illustrate a thesis or to display men and women confined to their external aspect, but to discover the matter they are made of, to attain that heart of the heart, which does not let itself be caught either by poetry or by philosophy or by drama. Images and sounds like people who make acquaintance on a journey and afterwards cannot separate. Nothing too much, nothing deficient. X's film. Two wicked eyes, trying to be good. A bitter mouth made for silence, which never stops talking and contradicting the words as soon as said. Star system, in which men and women have a factual existence, as phantoms. Charm of excess film made of bric-a-brac. As they are intended, cinema films can only use actors. Films of cinematography, models only. Music takes up the room and gives no increased value to the image to which it is added. The soundtrack invented silence. Absolute silence and silence obtained by a pianissimo of noises. Excess film, vociferations, roarings, as in the theater. Model, what you make known of yourself by coincidence with him. Let each image, each sound exert its weight not only upon your film and your models, but upon you. Draw the attention of the public, as we say that a chimney draws. A very small subject can provide the pretext for many profound combinations. Avoid subjects that are too vast or too remote, in which nothing warns you when you are going astray, or else take from them only what can be mingled with your life and belongs to your experience. Generality of music, which does not correspond to a film's generality. Exaltation that hinders the other exaltations. The devil hopped into his mouth. Don't have a devil hop into his mouth. All husbands are ugly. Don't show a multitude of ugly husbands. Of lighting. Things made more visible, not by more light, but by the fresh angle at which I regard them. Bring together things that have yet never been brought together, and do not seem predisposed to be so. Excess film, open on all sides, dispersion. Model, over his features, thought or feelings not materially expressed, rendered visible by the intercommunication and interaction of two or several other images. Neither inflation nor overloading. Debussy himself used to play with the piano's lid down. A single word, a single movement that is not right or is merely in the wrong place, gets in the way of all the rest. Rhythmic value of noise. Noise of a door opening and shutting, noise of footsteps, etc., for the sake of rhythm. A thing that has failed can, if you change its place, be a thing that has come off. Model, his permanence, always the same way of being different. An actor needs to get out of himself in order to see himself in the other person. Your models, once outside themselves, will not be able to get in again. Reorganize the unorganized noises. What you think you hear is not what you hear, of a street, a railroad station, an airport. Play them back one by one in silence and adjust the blend. Acting. The actor. It's not me you are seeing and hearing, it's the other man. But being able to be wholly the other, he is not that other. Cinema films controlled by intelligence, going no further. Retouch some real with some real. Model, his pure essence. The exchanges that are produced between images and images, sounds and sounds, images and sounds, give the people and objects in your films their cinematographic life, and by a subtle phenomenon, unify your composition. Images, conductors of the gaze, but the actor's acting throws the eye. With the Beaux-Arts, no rivalry. Dismantle and put together till one gets intensity. Don't think of your film outside the resources you have made for yourself. An actor coming from the theater brings with him inevitably its conventions, its morality, and some duties towards his art. Make yourself homogeneous with your models. Make them homogeneous with you. Images chosen in provision of their inner association. Models mechanized externally, internally free. On their faces nothing willful. The constant, the eternal beneath the accidental. Be the first to see what you see as you see it. Naive barbarity of dubbing. So most movies back then, especially in Europe, and this lasted until at least the 70s, they'd be shot MOS, which means motor only sound. Some people say it means mit sound, meaning that they didn't shoot audio on set. They would have like a scratch track and they would basically dub everything in post-production. That's why sometimes when you watch these like old European movies from the 50s, 60s, you'll see this like in spaghetti westerns a lot too. Sometimes the audio doesn't quite match up, the lips, but they were usually pretty good about it. But yeah, a lot of movies were shot this way back then. So of course he has a lot to say about dubbing. Voices without reality, not the conforming to the movement of the lips. They have mistaken their mouth. Return the past to the present, magic of the present. Model, all those things you could not conceive of him before or even during. Model, soul, body, both inimitable. An old thing becomes new if you detach it from what usually surrounds it. All those effects you can get from repetition of an image, of a sound. To find a kinship between image, sound, and silence. To give them an air of being glad and to be together, of having chosen their place. Milton, silence was pleased. Model, reduce to the minimum the share his consciousness has. Tighten the meshing within which he cannot any longer be him, and where he can now do nothing that is not useful. Images, like the modulations in music. Model, withdrawn into himself, of the little he lets escape, take only what suits you. Model, his way of being inward, unique, inimitable. I cannot say this word. Inimitable. Exis film, contagion of literature, description by a succession of things, pans and traveling shots. It does happen that the disorder of a film, because it is monotonous, deceives us, gives us the illusion of order. But it is a negative, sterile order, at a respectful distance from order and disorder. Dig into your sensation. Look at what there is within. Don't analyze it with words. Translate it into sister images, into equivalent sounds. The clearer it is, the more your style affirms itself. Style is all that is not technique. On shooting. Your film must resemble what you see on shutting your eyes. You must be capable at any instant of seeing and hearing it entire. So now we're on to sight and hearing. I'm going to take a water break. Let me read the chat here. All right, back to it. Actually, we're almost halfway through. I told you it's really short. To know thoroughly what business that sound or that image has there. What is for the eye must not duplicate what is for the ear. If the eye is entirely one, give nothing or almost nothing to the ear. One cannot be at the same time all eye and all ear. When a sound can replace an image, cut the image or neutralize it. The ear goes more towards the within, the eye towards the outer. A sound must never come to the rescue of an image, nor an image to the rescue of a sound. If a sound is the obligatory complement of an image, give preponderance either to the sound or to the image. If equal, they damage or kill each other, as we say of colors. Image and sound must not support each other, but must work in turn through a sort of relay. The eye solicited alone makes the ear impatient. The ear solicited alone makes the eye impatient. Use these impatiences. Power of the cinematographer who appeals to the two senses in a governable way. Against the tactics of speed, of noise, set tactics of slowness, of silence. Redacted. American English, possibly film, in which the two stars compete for the attention of the public. They impose an order on their features and never cease watching it. Waxwork aspect of their faces photographed in color. I think he would have been a good if he had a letterbox back then. He would be pretty controversial because I swear every time he talks about another movie in this book, it's always just to trash it. Model, preserved from any obligation towards the art of drama. On the stage, a horse or dog that is not plaster or cardboard causes uneasiness. Unlike cinematography, looking for a truth in the real is fatal in the theater. Model, the cause that makes him say this sentence or makes that movement is not in him, it is in you. The causes are not in the models. On the stage and in cinema films, the actor must make us believe that the cause is in him. Everything escapes and disperses. Continually bring it all back to one. The cinematographer's field is incommensurable. It gives you an unlimited power of creating. Model, don't just reduce or abolish the gap between you and him. Deep exploration. Actors, the nearer they approach on the screen with their expressiveness, the further away they get. Houses, trees come near, the actors go away. Nothing more inelegant and ineffective than an art conceived in another art's form. There is nothing to expect from a cinema anchored in the theater. Natural voice, trained voice. The voice, soul made flesh, trained as an X's case. It is no longer either soul or flesh, a precision instrument, but an instrument on its own. To be constantly changing lenses in photographing is like constantly changing one's glasses. So to give a little backstory to that, Bresson pretty much always shot with a normal lens, which in the case of 35mm is 50mm lens. So almost all of his films are shot with only a 50mm lens. And I kind of took from that, all my YouTube videos are shot pretty much only with a 50mm lens. And also when I shot my movie, I shot it on a 19mm lens, but for 16mm, I shot on a normal lens for Super 16, which is the equivalent to a 50mm. So that's definitely something that I took away after reading this. Not to like say that, using a whole bunch of lenses is bad. I like it in a lot of movies, but it's, if you use one lens, it actually kind of forces you to do a lot of creative things, in my opinion. Belief. Theater and cinema. Alternation of believing and not believing. Cinematography. Continually believing. Practice the precept. Find without seeking. Models. Letting themselves be led not by you, but by the words and gestures you make them say and do. To your models, one must not act either somebody else or oneself. One must not act anybody. A thing expressible solely by the cinematographically new, therefore a new thing. Simultaneous precision and imprecision of music, 1,000 possible, unforeseeable sensations. An actor draws from him what is not really there. Illusionist. Avoid paroxysms, anger, terror, etc., which one is obliged to simulate, and in which everybody is alike. Rhythms. The omnipotence of rhythms. Nothing is de ring but what is caught up in rhythms. Bend content to form and sense to rhythms. That's very important, actually. Gestures and words. Gestures and words cannot form the substance of a film as they form the substance of a stage play. But the substance of a film can be that thing or those things which provoke the gestures and words and which are produced in some obscure way in your models. Your camera sees them and records them. So one escapes from the photographic reproduction of actors performing a play, and cinematography, that new writing, becomes at the same time a method of discovery. Your models, pitched into the action of your film, will get used to gestures they have repeated 20 times. The words they have learned with their lips will find, without their minds taking part in this, the inflections and the lilt proper to their true natures, a way of recovering the automatism of real life, The talent of one or several actors or stars no longer comes into it. What matters is how you approach your models and the unknown and the virgin nature you manage to draw from them. One forgets too easily the difference between a man and his image, and that there is none between the sound of his voice on screen and in real life. Your models must not lend themselves to your camera or microphone take. Render their attitude, what is singular about them, easy for them. Your film will have the beauty or the sadness, or what have you, that one finds in a town, in a countryside, in a house, and not the beauty, sadness, etc. that one finds in the photograph of a town, a countryside, or a house. In this language of images, one must lose completely the notion of image. The images must exclude the idea of image. Voices and face. They have formed together and have grown used to each other. Your film is not ready-made. It makes itself as it goes along under your gaze. Images and sounds in a state of waiting and reserve. Today, and this says while he was editing probably A Man Escaped in 1956, I was not present at a projection of images and of sounds. I was present at the visible and instantaneous action they were exerting on one another and at their transformation, the bewitched real. The distance Racine demands is the impossible distance which separates a stage from the audience, distance of the play from reality, and not the distance of the writer from his models. We're halfway through. This is definitely a lot easier than Sculpting in Time. Formerly, religion of the beautiful and sublimation of the subject. Today, the same noble aspirations, to scrape oneself clean of matter and realism, to emerge from vulgar imitation of nature. But the sublimation turns towards technique. The cinema falls between two stools. It cannot sublimate either the technique, photography, or the actors, whom it imitates as they are. Not absolutely realistic, because it is theatrical and conventional. Not absolutely theatrical and conventional, because it is realistic. The sight of movement gives happiness, horse, athlete, bird. The actor projects himself before him in the form of the character he wants to seem, lends him from his own body, face, voice, makes him sit down, stand up, walk, penetrates him with sentiments and passions he himself does not have. This I, who is not his I, is incompatible with cinematography. From the beings and things of nature, washed clean of all art, and especially of the art of drama, you will make an art. Let images and sounds present themselves spontaneously to your eyes and ears as words do to the spirit of a creative writer. X demonstrates a great stupidity when he says that to touch the masses, there is no need of art. Because you do not have to imitate, like painters, sculptors, novelists, and the appearance of persons and objects. Machines do that for you. Your creation or invention confines itself to the ties you knot between the various bits of reality caught. There is also the choice of the bits. Your flair decides. A water break. What ennobles an actor on the boards can make him vulgar on the screen. Practice of one art in the form of belonging to another. Models. What they lose in apparent prominence during the shooting, they gain in depth and in truth on the screen. It is the flattest and dullest parts that have, in the end, the most life. They think this simplicity is a sign of meager invention. Racine, Preface to Berenice. Two simplicities, the bad. Simplicity as a starting point, sought too soon. The good, simplicity as an end product, recompense for years of effort. Corot, one must not seek, one must wait. Model, his untrained voice gives us his intimate character in philosophy, better than his physical aspect. To translate the invisible wind by the water it sculpts in passing. Model. He shuts himself up in himself. So does X, that excellent actor. But he does it to reappear masked by acting, unrecognizable. Models. Capable of eluding their own vigilance, capable of being divinely themselves. Life cannot be rendered by photographic recopying of life, but by the secret laws in the midst of which you can feel your models moving. With the centuries, the theater has bourgeoisified. The cinema, photograph theater, shows how far. A whole gaggle of critics making no distinction between cinema and cinematography, opening an eye now and then to the actor's inadequate presence and performance, shutting it again at once. Obliged to like in a lump all that is projected onto the screens. Resemblance, difference. Give more resemblance in order to obtain more difference. Uniform and unity in life bring out the nature and character of soldiers. Standing at attention, the immobility of them all shows up the individual signs of each. On the real. The real, when it has reached the mind, is already not real anymore. Our too thoughtful, too intelligent eye. Two sorts of real. 1. The crude real recorded as it is by the camera. 2. What we call real and see deformed by our memory and some wrong reckonings. Problem. To make what you see be seen through the intermediary of a machine that does not see it as you see it. The persons and the objects in your film must walk at the same pace as companions. What is done without self-control, active, chemical principles of your models. Rightness of relationships fends off the color repro. The newer the relations, the more lively is the effect of beauty. To have discernment, precision, and perception. The bonds that beings and things are waiting for in order to live. X's film, in which the words are not bound to the action. The true is not encrusted in the living persons and real objects you use. It is an air of truth that their images take on when you set them together in a certain order. Vice versa, the air of truth their images take on when you set them together in a certain order confers to these persons and objects a reality. To put sentiments on his face and into gestures is the art of the actor, is theater. Not to put sentiments on his face and in his gestures is still not cinematography. Involuntarily expressive models, not willfully inexpressive ones. The eye, in general, superficial, the ear profound and inventive. A locomotive's whistle imprints in us a whole railroad station. Your film must take off. Bombast and the picturesque hinder it from taking off. Make visible what, without you, might perhaps never have been seen. No psychology, of the kind which discovers only what it can explain. When you do not know what you are doing, and what you are doing is the best, that is inspiration. Your camera passes through faces, provided no mimicry, intentional or non-intentional, gets in between. Cinematographic films made of inner movements which are seen. Images and sounds must sustain one another, from far and from near. No independent images or sounds. The truth is inimitable, the false untransformable. Right intonations when your model exercises no control over them. Models, no ostentation, faculty of gathering into himself, of keeping, of not letting anything get out. A certain inward configuration common to all of them. Eyes. To your models, speak as if you were speaking to yourselves. Monologue instead of dialogue. They want to find the solution where all is enigma only. This is quoted to Pascal. X, famous star with the overexposed too intelligible features. Model. It is his non-rational, non-logical I, as in the letter I or the me, that your camera records. Model. You illumine him and he illumines you. The light that you receive from him is added to the light he receives from you. On economy. Make known that we are in the same place by repetition of the same noises and the same sonority. Shooting with the same eyes and the same ears today as yesterday. Unity, homogeneity. I can't say that word. Choose your models well, so that they lead you where you want to go. Models. Their way of being the people in your film is by being themselves, by remaining what they are, even in contradiction with what you had imagined. Music. It isolates your film from the life of your film. Music delectation. It is a powerful modifier and even destroyer of the real, like alcohol or dope. Cutting. Phosphorus that wells up suddenly from your models, floats around them and binds them to your objects. Blue of Cézanne, gray of El Greco. Your genius is not in the counterfeiting of nature, actors, sets, but in your way of choosing and coordinating bits taken directly from it by machines. Models, mechanized outwardly, intact, virgin within. To communicate impressions, sensations. X looked at on the screen, right in the face, as though he were a long way off. Model, his essence, neat. Neither beautify nor uglify, do not denature. It is in its pure form that an art hits hard. Your film is beginning when your secret wishes pass into your models. An actor used in a film as on the stage outside himself is not there. His image is empty. Retouch some real with some real. To move people not with images likely to move us, but with relations of images that render them both alive and moving. The actor's creative simplification has its own nobility and its reason for existing on the stage. In films, it does away with the complexity of the man he is, and with this, the contradictions and obscurities of his true I. Cutting, passage of dead images to living images. Everything blossoms afresh. Slow films in which everyone is galloping and gesticulating. Swift films in which people hardly stir. Do not use the same models in two films. 1. One would not believe in them. 2. They would look at themselves in the first film as one looks at oneself in the mirror, would want people to see them as they wish to be seen, would impose a discipline on themselves, would grow disenchanted as they corrected themselves. See your film as a combination of lines and volumes and movement apart from what it represents and signifies. Your models must not feel they are dramatic. Cut what would deflect attention elsewhere. Quality of a new world which none of the existing arts allow to be imagined. Extreme complexity. Your films, attempts, trials. Your images will release their phosphorus only in aggregating. An actor wants to be phosphorescent right away. Model. The spark caught in his eye's pupil gives significance to his whole person. Image. Reflection and reflector. Accumulator and conductor. Not beautiful photography, not beautiful images, but necessary images in photography. To place the public opposite beings and things. Not as some people place it arbitrarily by acquired habits, cliches, but as you would place yourself, according to your unforeseeable impressions and sensations. Never decide anything in advance. The actor learning his part presupposes a self known in advance, which does not exist. Shooting. Agony of making sure not to let any part of what I merely glimpse, of what I perhaps do not yet see, and shall only later be able to see. On fragmentation. This is indispensable. If one does not want to fall into representation, see beings and things in their separate parts, render them independent in order to give them a new dependence. Displaying everything condemns cinema to cliché, obliges it to display things as everyone is in the habit of seeing them, failing which they would appear false or sham. intonations of voice, mimicries, gestures conceived by the actor in advance and at the time. Shooting. You will not know till much later if your film is worth the mountain range of efforts it is costing you. The reel is not dramatic. Drama will be born of a certain march of non-dramatic elements. In his film, X displays things having no appropriateness to each other, and so without bonds, and so dead. Your film is not made for a stroll with the eyes, but for going right into and being totally absorbed in. Expression through compression. To put into an image what a writer would spin out over 10 pages. Failure of cinema. Ludicrous disproportion between immense possibilities and the result, the star system. A director drives his actors to simulate fictitious human beings in the midst of objects that are not so. The false which he prefers will not change into true. An actor, however excellent, limited to one type of creation, without shadows. Borrowing the theater's resources leads inevitably to the visual and aural picturesque. One does not create by adding, but by taking away. To develop is another matter, not to spread out. Empty the pond to get the fish. Against actors' assurance, set the charm of models who do not know what they are. One same subject changes in accordance with images and sounds. Religious subjects receive their dignity and their elevation from the images and the sounds, not, as people believe, the other way around. The images and sounds received from the religious subjects. To an actor, the camera is the eye of the public. Models, it is to you, not to the public, that they give these things which it perhaps would not see, which you glimpse only, a secret and sacred trust. An ice-cold commentary can warm, by contrast, tepid dialogues in a film, phenomenon analogous to that of hot and cold in painting. Silence, musical by an effect of resonance, the last syllable of the last word, or the last noise, like a held note. Things too much in disorder, or too much in order, become equal. One no longer distinguishes them. They produce indifference and boredom. Obvious traveling or panning shots do not correspond to the movements of the eye. This is to separate the eye from the body. One should not use the camera as if it were a broom. Another water break. Yeah, so his philosophy on how to make movies was quite radical. It is quite radical, even by today's standards. And he didn't always live up to this. It's kind of like a utopian standard that he sort of held for himself. But it's really interesting to see the sort of purity that he was going for with filmmaking. That's really what it was. It was like this quest to make like the purest film. I think that the film that he made that's probably the closest to hitting this purity mark is L'Argent, which was his final film in 1983. So we'll get to that. Models. You'll be setting not the limits of their power, but those within which they will exercise it. Quantity, enormity, falsity of means yielding place to simplicity and rightness. Everything brought back to the scale of what suffices you. It is not a matter of acting simple or of acting inward, but of not acting at all. Cinematography films, emotional, not representational. Provoke the unexpected, expected. The cinema did not start from zero, everything to be called into question. A cry, a noise, the resonance makes us guess at a house, a forest, a plain, a mountain. Their rebound indicates to us the distances. It is with something clean and precise that you will force the attention of inattentive eyes and ears. Model. That which animates him, words, movements, is not something that paints him, as in a theater, but something that obliges him to paint himself. A cinema film reproduces the reality of the actor, at the same time as that of the man he is being. Your public is not the public for books, stage shows, exhibitions, or concerts. Taste in literature, in theater, in painting, or in music is not what you have to satisfy. Let the cause follow the effect, not accompany it or precede it. Words do not always coincide with thought. Earlier, later, the aping of this non-coincidence in films is dreadful. From the clash and sequence of images and sounds, a harmony of relationships must be born. Model, closed, does not enter into communication with the outside world except unawares. Create expectations to fulfill them. Model, you will pin down his image intact, not deformed by his intelligence, nor by yours. Without abandoning the line which must never be abandoned, and without letting go of anything of you, allow camera and tape recorder to catch, for the space of a flash, the new and unforeseen which your model offers you. A virtuoso makes us hear the music not as it is written, but as he feels it. Actor virtuoso. Don't show all sides of things, a margin of indefiniteness. Shooting is going out to meet something, nothing in the unexpected that is not secretly expected by you. Not only new relationships, but a new manner of rearticulating and adjusting. Face to face with the real, your taut attention shows up the mistakes of the original conception. It is your camera that corrects them, but the impression felt by you is the sole reality that has interest. Shooting is not making something definitive, it is making preparations. Several takes of the same thing, like a painter who does several pictures or drawings of the same subject, and each fresh time progresses towards rightness. Model who, in spite of himself and of you, frees the real man from the fictitious man you had imagined. The actor is double. The alternate presence of him and of the other is what the public has been schooled to cherish. Mark out clearly the limits within which you seek to let yourself be surprised of your model. Infinite surprises within a finite frame. The crude real will not by itself yield truth. Your camera catches not only physical movements that are inapprehensible by pencil, brush, or pen, but also certain states of soul, recognizable by indices which it alone can reveal. Star system makes nothing of the immense power of attraction which belongs to the new and unforeseen. Film after film, subject after subject, confronting the same faces that one cannot believe in. Transplantation. Images and sounds are fortified by being transplanted. Oh. Hey guys.
Hey. Oh, you streaming?
Yeah. Transplantation. Images and sounds are fortified by being transplanted. Accustom the public to divining the whole of which they are given only a part. Make people diviners. Make them desire it. Exercises. Put your models through reading exercises, designed to equalize their syllables and to do away with an intentional personal effect. The script made uniform and regular, expression that can pass unnoticed, obtained by almost imperceptible slowings and quickenings, and by the dull and the brilliant in the voice. Timbre and tempi. Timbre equals stamp. What our eyes and ears require is not the realistic persona, but the real person. Films whose slowness and silences are indistinguishable from the slowness and silences of the audience are ruled out. The actor's performance is definitive, untransformable. It remains what it is. In the Greek Catholic liturgy, be attentive. Cinema, radio, television, magazines are a school of inattention. People look without seeing, listen in without hearing. Model, he paints his self-portrait with what you dictate to him, gestures, words, and the likeness, rather as if it were indeed a painting, has in it as much of you as of him. Color gives force to your images. It is a means of rendering the real more true. But if this real is not wholly real, it stresses its unlikeliness, its non-existence. Model has become automatic, protected against any thought. Oh yeah, and so another point is that Bresson was against using color in film until, so this is written in the 50s. I'm guessing late 50s is from when this is. He shot everything in black and white until Gentlewoman in 1970. He did transition to color, but it did take him a little while. So he ended up kind of going back on some of his statements about color. I mean, it's interesting from this perspective to see transformation of, like he had some sort of thoughts or some sort of philosophies about thing, or maybe not philosophy is the right word, but thoughts or just stances on things that he ended up kind of shifting, changing over the years. A lot of it he didn't really change, but some, like color, he did change. He also kind of used some music in his movies. Four Nights of a Dreamer uses music, some non-diegetic, some diegetic. He uses it, though, in a very interesting way. I don't think there's any music in L'Argent, though. Okay. Model has become automatic, protected against any thought. Films are at the stage of academic painting. Bouguereau's Siege of Paris, where one seems to be looking at soldiers in some movie action which they have learnt. See at once in what you are seeing, what will be seen. Your camera does not take things as you see them. It does not take what you make them mean. It is profitable that what you find should not be what you were expecting. Intrigued, excited by the unexpected. The collocazione of the images and sounds. Make the images look as if they want to be there. Photography is descriptive, neat image confined to description. Model, beautiful with all the movements he does not make, could make. The most ordinary word, when put into place, suddenly acquires brilliance. That is the brilliance with which your images must shine. So that's the majority of notes on a cinematograph. But what we have next is really just like 15 or so pages of further notes. So this is from the period of 1960s, so starting right after he finished Pickpocket, to 1974, which I think is when he made Lancelot of the Lake. So in that time, you have the trial of Joan of Arc, I think in 1961 or 2, trial of Joan of Arc, O Hazard Balthazar, Mouchette, Gentlewoman, Four Nights of a Dreamer, and then I think Lancelot of the Lake. I don't know, maybe Lancelot of the Lake was 76 or 75 or something. I could be a little off, but this is a period that often is seen as maybe one of his best periods. Definitely O Hazard Balthazar and Mouchette are seen as like two of his best. It's also the period in which he transitioned to color. So this is, his style is maybe going a little bit, but even though he transitions to color, it's kind of funny. His color films are more in line with the rest of his restrictions that he puts on himself than some of his black and white movies. So almost done. We just got a few more pages left. It's 88 pages and on page 73. So about 15 pages. Wondrous, wondrous, wondrous machine, Purcell. How extraordinary is it not that a man should be a man? This is perhaps what camera and tape recorder say to each other in front of G, model. Be as ignorant of what you are going to catch as is a fisherman of what is at the end of his fishing rod, the fish that arises from nowhere. When the public is ready to feel before understanding, what a number of films reveal and explain everything to it. I remember an old film, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Life was suspended during 30 wonderful seconds, during which nothing happened. In reality, everything happened. Cinematography, the art with images of representing nothing. G divinely as man, F divinely as woman. Let's see, is there... I guess they don't say who G or F is. Without any trick. The trick is what is hidden, not let out, not revealed in them. Leonardo recommends notebooks, thinking hard of the end. Leonardo recommends from notebooks, thinking hard of the end, thinking first and foremost of the end. The end is the screen, which is only a surface. Submit your film to the reality of the screen, as a painter submits his picture to the reality of the canvas itself and of the colors applied on it. The sculptor his figures to the reality of the marble or the bronze. 10 properties of an object, according to Leonardo. Light and dark, color and substance, form and position, distance and nearness, movement and stillness. The people I pass in the Avenue des Champs-Élysées appear to me like marble figures, moved forward by springs. But let their eyes meet mine, and at once these walking and gazing statues become human. Two men facing each other, eye to eye, two cats attracting each other. To defeat the false powers of photography. Hollow idea of art cinema, of art films. Art films, the ones most devoid of it. What I reject as too simple is the thing that is important and that one must dig into. Stupid mistrust of the simple things. Evolution in a zone forbidden to the existing arts, unexploitable by them. The theater is something that is too much known. Cinematography, a thing too unknown up to now. The public's irresistible need to see, get near, touch the stars in the flesh, a need frustrated by the photograph theater, autographs. Your film's beauty will not be in the images, postcardism, but in the ineffable that they will disengage. Many people are needed in order to make a film, but only one who makes, unmakes, remakes his images and sounds, returning at each second to the initial impression or sensation which brought these to birth and is incomprehensible to the other people. To forge for oneself iron laws, if only in order to obey or disobey them with difficulty. In X's eyes, the cinema is a special industry. In Y's, an enlarged theater. Z sees the box office figures. Telephone. His voice makes him visible. Economy. Racine, to his son Louis. I know your handwriting well enough, without your having to sign your name. The future of cinematography belongs to a new race of young solitaires who will shoot films by putting their last penny into it and not let themselves be taken in by the material routines of the trade. In your passion for the true, people may see nothing but faddism. Look at a bad reputation. Fear a good one that you could not sustain. Or laugh at a bad reputation. Fear a good one that you cannot sustain. Admire without limits the simplicity and modesty of the great artists of the past, exposed to the arrogance of the nobility. Think carefully what this meticulous work requires of you, and that an actor, professional or not, remains an actor, even deep in a desert. Prodigious heaven-sent machines, camera and tape recorder. To use them merely for rehashing something phony will appear, in less than 50 years' time, irrational and absurd. The public does not know what it wants. Impose on it your decisions, your delights. It is for singing always the same song that the nightingale is it for singing always the same song that the nightingale is so admired? Novelty is not originality nor modernity. Proust says that Dostoevsky is original in composition above all. It is an extraordinarily complex and close-meshed world, purely inward, with currents and countercurrents like those of the sea, a thing that is found also in Proust, in other ways so different, and whose equivalent would go well with the film. This is from 1963. Left Rome abruptly, abandoned irrevocably the preparatory work for Genesis, to cut short idiotic discussions and desecrating obstruction. How strange is it that people can ask you to do what they themselves would certainly be prevented from doing, because they do not know what it is. I'll talk about Genesis after finishing this, and not in the American Psycho Genesis kind of way. But let me take a water break. 9 pages left. This is like shorter than one chapter of Tarkovsky's book. All right, here we go. The things one can express with the hand, with the head, with the shoulders. How many useless and encumbering words then disappear? What economy? Shuddering of images awakening. I have dreamed of my film making itself as it goes along under my gaze, like a painter's eternally fresh canvas. It is from being a constrained to a mechanical regularity. It is from a mechanism that emotion will be born. To understand this, think of certain great pianists. A great non-virtuoso pianist, of the Lipati kind, strikes notes that are rigorously equal, minims, each of the same length, same intensity, quavers, semiquavers, etc. Likewise, he does not slap emotion onto the keys. He waits for it. It comes and fills his fingers, the piano, him, the audience. Production of emotion determined by a resistance to emotion. Bach at the organ, admired by a people, answered, "It's a matter of striking the notes at exactly the right moment." It is as if there are two truths, one that is dull, flat, boring, at least in the eyes of those who daub it with falsity, the other. For want of truth, the public gets hooked on the false. Falcinetti's way of casting her eyes to heaven in Dreyer's film, used to draw tears. These horrible days, when shooting film disgusts me, when I am exhausted, powerless in the face of so many obstacles, are part of my method of work. A highly compressed film will not yield its best at the first go. People see in it at first what seems like something they have seen before. There ought to be in Paris one quite small, very well-equipped cinema in which only 1 or 2 films would be shown each year. Precision of aim lays one open to hesitations. Debussy. I've spent a week deciding on one chord rather than another. Do not draw back from prodigies. Command the moon, the sun. Let loose the thunder and the lightning. What damage, not only among the public, is done by idle, out-of-date criticism that judges according to the optics of the stage. Reject historical films whose effect would be theater or masquerade. In my Trial of Joan of Arc, I have tried to avoid theater and masquerade, but to arrive at a non-historical truth by using historical words. Oscars to actors whose body, face, and voice do not seem to be theirs do not produce any certainty that they belong to them. It is useless and silly to work specifically for a public. I cannot try what I am making at the moment of making it except on myself. Besides, all that matters is to make well. Be precise in the form, not always in the substance, if you can. It is what I do not get to know of F and G models that makes them so interesting to me. Prefer what intuition whispers in your ear to what you have done and redone 10 times in your head. Ideas gathered from reading will always be bookish ideas. Go to the persons and objects directly. Have a painter's eye. The painter creates by looking. The pistol shot of the painter's eye dislocates the reel. Then the painter puts it up again and organizes it in that same eye, according to his taste, his methods, his ideal beauty. Every movement reveals us, so said Montaigne, but it only reveals us if it is automatic, not commanded, not willed. Talking of automatism, this also from Montaigne. We cannot command our hair to stand on end, nor our skin to startle for desire or fear. Our hands are often carried where we direct them not. Subject, technique, actor's style go by fashion. result a sort of prototype, which one film every 2 or 3 years changes for a new one. Masterpieces. The masterpieces of painting or sculpture, such as Giocondo or the Venus de Milo, have so many reasons for being admired that they are admired for both the good and the bad ones. Cinema masterpieces are often admired only for the bad ones. X, to follow the fashion, puts into his films a little of everything, like a painter who works with too many colors. While some people, under the influence of cinema, are trying to change the theater, others, as they shoot their films, get all tied up in its ancient habits, rules, codes. Misunderstandings. No, or hardly any harsh criticism of praise that is not based on some misunderstanding. One ought to be born with a special sense for reconciliation and harmony. In this non-picturesque film, in which nothing theatrically lingers on, B sees only emptiness. Always the same joy, the same astonishment at the fresh significance of an image whose place I have just changed. The things we bring off by chance, what power they have. That's it, or that's not it, at the first glance. Reasoning comes afterwards, to approve our first glance. Hostility to art is also hostility to the new, to the unforeseen. Take action first. In London, a gang broke open the safe in a jeweler's shop and laid hands on pearl necklaces, rings, gold, precious stones. They found also the key to the nearby jeweler's safe, which they cleaned out, and this safe contained the third of a third jeweler's safe, newspaper reports. Get things away from habit, dechloroform them. In the nude, all that is not beautiful is obscene. On the indispensable absolute confidence in oneself, this from Madame de Sévigné, when I listen to myself only, I do wonders. Equality of all things. Cézanne, painting with the same eye and the same soul a fruit dish, his son, the Montagne Saint-Victoire. Cézanne, at each touch I risk my life. Build your film on white, on silence, and on stillness. Silence is necessary to music, but it is not part of music. Music leans on it. The number of films that are patched up with music. People flood a film with music. They are preventing us from seeing that there is nothing in those images. It is only recently and gradually that I have suppressed the music and have used silence as an element of composition and means to emotion. Must say this or incur dishonesty. So he's admitting essentially that he started using music. He did use music in his earlier movies, but I think it was studio demands of some sort. But in some of his later films, like Four Nights of a Dreamer, he also does use music. Let nothing be changed and all be different. Montesquieu says about humor that its difficulty consists in making you find in the thing a new feeling which nevertheless comes from the thing. Do not try and do not wish to draw tears from the public with the tears of your models, but with this image rather than that one, this sound rather than that one, exactly in their place. Make yourself be believed. Dante in exile, walking in the streets of Verona, people whispered to each other that he goes to hell when he chooses and brings back news from there. What do I start from? From the subject to be expressed, from sensation? Do I start twice? What is, face to face with the real, this intermediary work of the imagination? To be scrupulous, reject everything about the real that does not become true, the dreadful reality of the false. What H. model hides from me, he hides not to appear to himself or to me as what he is not, but from modesty. And finally, divination. How can one not associate that name with the two sublime machines I use for my work? Camera and tape recorder carry me far away from the intelligence which complicates everything. So that is notes on the Cinematograph by Bresson. I would highly recommend getting it. As you probably heard, it's kind of like if you've read like Proverbs or Ecclesiastes, it's kind of like those books. It's a whole bunch of just various thoughts, and it does kind of move in a thematic way. And you can see from a distance at least his style sort of shifting or kind of forming over the years, as well as him talking about basically movies he doesn't like. And some kind of random things in there, but it does give a sense of who he is. If you want to get to know more about Bresson, there's another book that I have over there called Bresson on Bresson, which I think you can also get on Amazon. I mean, I bought it at a bookstore, but you can get it on Amazon, I do believe. And that is a collection of interviews. And so this actually kind of goes like Bresson and Bresson is a really good complimentary book. It's longer than this. That goes more into sort of his whole way of looking at what film should be. And I highly recommend reading that if you want to get into him. I mean, if you like Bresson, like the thing is that he's incredibly influential. Michael Haneke is definitely a student of Bresson and how he shoots a film. Richard Linklater's also a big time sort of Bressonian style filmmaker. But let me see. Let me check super chats here. Thanks for the quality content. Oh, thanks. Thanks there, Mr. Film Trip. But yeah, so now I guess it's an hour and a half in. Look, I was pretty right. You know, it took about an hour. It took about an hour to read it. So yeah, so we'll just hang out for a little bit. I'll just cut this down. Oh yeah, I told you that I was gonna talk about Genesis. So he made his final film, L'Argent. He released that in 1983, and that ended up winning one of the top awards at the Cannes Film Festival. The film that won, I believe, the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival that year was Andrei Tarkovsky's The Sacrifice. Was that The Sacrifice or was that Nostalgia? Let me look this up here. No, that was Nostalgia. Won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival that year, and it was presented by Orson Welles. So there's a pretty legendary photo of Orson Welles, Robert Bresson, and Andrei Tarkovsky all on stage with each other. It's it's pretty legendary. But what's interesting is, so there was a short documentary made by these students, and so they filmed it, and they talked to Tarkovsky beforehand. And actually, if you look at the film of them on the stage, Tarkovsky is fanboying over Bresson, but Bresson by that point was super old. I mean, he was in his 80s. He died when he was 99 years old in 1999. So yeah, so he would have been 80, 83 or something. I mean, he's just this tall old man standing there on the stage, and it almost doesn't even seem like he wants to be there, but I'm sure he was having a good time. He kind of always seemed like the grumpy old man. If you guys haven't seen any Bresson films, I made a video on Bresson, as I said, a little while back. But if you want to get into watching them, I do think, I say this in the video, and I still do think this, is I think that the best way to get into it, to go from his most accessible to his least accessible films, is honestly to watch his films chronologically. His films do get less accessible as he made more. Each film was less accessible than the last one. You could argue that each film was better than the last one, or you could argue which ones are his best. For me, my favorites of his are probably L'Argent, Man Escaped, O Hazard Balthazar, and Lancelot of the Lake. I don't know. I love all of his movies. As I say, he's in my top. He's in my top 3 film directors. Pickpocket. Yeah, I can't even believe I forgot Pickpocket to say there. I just really wish that somebody like Criterion or Arbalos or, I mean, Arrow is not going to do, or Shout Factor, they're not going to do anything about Bresson, but I don't know, Mondo or Vinegar Syndrome or something will release these lesser known Bresson movies. I know the Criterion Channel has The Trial of Joan of Arc to stream, but as far as I know, there isn't any physical media of The Trial of Joan of Arc that's currently readily available, at least in the States. So I'm hoping that more of his movies become accessible to people, because I think that especially for people who want to be filmmakers, it's very important um, to watch movies by people like him. I mean, if Tarkovsky thinks that he's a genius, he should probably watch all of. You should probably watch everything that he's made. You know, it teaches you a lot about like what's really important in films, and he made big strides to actually like make film its own art form, and this was a big problem, right? Like in the 20s, because, or not in the 20s, but in the 20th century, because art or film wasn't really seen as art before around the 1950s when cahiers du cinema sort of came onto the stage, right? Um, and So before then, we have to look back at how film was seen. You have in the 19 teens, you had the Supreme Court ruling that unanimous ruling that film, in fact, is not art, that is business, plain and simple. And so it was seen as entertainment business. You know, a lot of this stuff kind of came out of vaudeville. A lot of cinemas were sort of in vaudeville theaters. They didn't see them as art, but as products for entertainment, and that's why we had the Hays Code here, and that's why there was a lot more censorship, because it wasn't seen as free speech back for several decades. It wasn't until the 1950s. It was actually with the influx of American films into French cinemas and the creation of cahiers du cinema in, I think, the 40s, and then you have critics like Andre Bazin and his kind of group of people, which was like Godard and Truffaut and Louis Malle, and they sort of but they sort of like helped kind of change the sort of worldwide perception on film, and to get people to see it as art. And then it was, I think, in 1953, it was something like that, in the early 50s, the Supreme Court ruling from the 19 teens was overturned. And that was overturned. And so then in the 50s, there was, of course, we had the rise of television. Movie studios were doing all sorts of things. Like, it was a very turbulent time in the film industry, right? Because now people didn't have to go to the movie theaters to see serials. You know, we had TV shows, cartoons, news, that kind of stuff. That all was going to television, and even movies were going to television. And so cinemas had to basically come up with new ways to get people to the movies. You know, so we saw VistaVision being made. We saw CinemaScope. We saw 65 millimeter. We saw cinema. Or what's it called? Like How the West Was Won. I'm blanking on what that was called, but it was like three 35 millimeter screens, you know. I forget what that's called, but it's totally doesn't really work. I mean, I would love to see a movie in that way, but it's extremely expensive. So while movie studios were trying to do all this, you know, we also had the kind of the rise of like Italian neorealism, which started in the 40s, kind of that was in the wake of a post-Mussolini Italy. You had the French New Wave that was starting to come up. You had a whole bunch of in Japan, this whole like new movement post like empire, big names like Kobayashi, Kurosawa, and Ozu. so you had like this explosion of art cinema. I mean, that's also when we see Fellini and Bergman and like all these great, all these great guys. And even in America, that's when John Cassavetes got to start. And that's kind of, if you want to look at it, the kind of the seeds of the sort of American independent cinema kind of start in the 50s. So all this is happening, and some people are saying like, okay, now that film is like seen as art, like how is it that we're going to make it like basically how is it that we're basically going to make it like this important art, or like to where we can justify its artisticness to ourselves? And that's when you get, Bresson and Tarkovsky and like a lot of these other filmmakers who it was kind of debated at that time. And so the two different books that I read, Sculpting in Time and Notes on the Cinematograph, kind of propose differing views on how to basically separate cinema from everything else. It's quite interesting, and I think that video games will have to have this conversation, and they'll have to have a very mature conversation about this soon, and I think that we live in this world where we see everything as art, or people want to see everything as art, and I think that's entirely an incorrect way of looking at things. I certainly don't see my videos as art. I see them as educational. I see them as sort of I see them as accompaniments to art, because my videos by themselves cannot exist without the existence of art, and it's basically complementing something that is artistic or not artistic. I mean, not every movie that I talk about is necessarily art, but I don't think that not everything is art. I think that's kind of a misguided way of looking at the world. Johan says, I think film is at risk of being de-arted in the popular view in the way that music has been. Yeah, in a sense. It's sort of like, if you guys seen The Incredibles, it's like this idea. It's like if everyone is a superhero, then no one will be. But it's like if everything is art, then nothing is. It's a similar sort of thing. Now, that's not to say that there's, if this movie is not a piece of art, then it has no place. That's not to say that it's not the case at all. It certainly has its place. But I think that Bresson was wrong in his prediction of the future, because he kind of thought that people would eventually side with him, but he predicted it would happen within like 50 years. And in fact, people have leaned more into this idea of filmed theater than they have into his idea of cinematography. Kyle Eagle says, art should challenge you and force you to think. It's interactive, not passive. Yeah, exactly. So some people are asking about my script. Yeah, so I was pitching it actually to some producers the other day. So I don't want to like give too much away about it, but it's not really a work in progress. I actually finished writing the script like, I don't know, a year and a half ago. I'll go back in and I'll do a new revision or whatever, which is just like, I'll have this idea and like, I want to add this theme into this. I want to like I'll be reading something. I've been reading like a lot of mythology recently. I love reading mythology. So I'll be reading something or listening to something, and I get an idea that I kind of want to I want to go in. I want to include this, but so there's little things that I've done, but it's sort of I wrote it initially as kind of like a basic film noir, really just as a writing exercise, because what I used to do is I used to write feature screenplays when I was like 19, 20, 21, 22 or whatever. I would write feature-length screenplays just as writing exercises. I would, just to kind of be able to get myself into this space that I could write something that was 100 pages long, or, sometimes longer, sometimes a little shorter. I think my longest script I've ever wrote was 140 pages long. And to kind of work through ideas, find my sort of voice as far as writing goes. I was reading screenplays. I was working as a script doctor. Script doctor basically is like somebody sends you the script and then you kind of like ghost write it. You kind of rewrite it, but like punch everything up and make it not suck. So I was doing that, and then I got into my head this kind of conceptual idea of a trilogy, an unrelated trilogy or a thematically related trilogy. That is because I was, I forget what I was, I don't know, I was reading something or listening to something or whatever. Someone says like my 47 dreams, my ideas come from my dreams. Look, I have a lot of ideas that come from dreams. I have very vivid dreams. Very vivid dreams. I have felt like what it's like to die many, many times, and I remember it when I wake up, and I remember it for days. Actually, I still remember it. Or kind of, like the emotions and whatever. And I always feel like it's extremely real, and I feel it very intensely. So this idea stemmed from my love of Western movies and my love of genre, and not necessarily like source cryptic symbolism in my dreams. Oh yeah, I love that meme. My love of genre, but not genre that's like conventional genre, but like movies that kind of play with these genre conventions but make something wholly original, like I would say Blue Velvet does with film noir. And I'm big onto reading Greek mythology, Roman mythology. Right now I'm reading Norse mythology because I'm doing a whole bunch of kind of prep work for a video on the Northmen. So I've been reading tons of Norse mythology. It's staying away from the Neil Gaiman rewriting of stuff where it's like I looked at the book and it was like a Norse mythology but for modern people, and I'm like, I'm not reading that then. That's not Norse mythology. Like, why am I gonna? I was reading some reviews of it, like where people were saying like, oh, this is actually kind of like sucks. It's like a bad representation of Norse myth. But I'm not gonna read Norse myth by Neil Gaiman. I'm just gonna try to get stuff that is as close to the source as I can get with the modern English translation of the stuff. But yeah, so no, I was reading a whole bunch of mythology and everything like that, and I thought, what's like the genesis story of America, right? What's our creation myth? And I think that the American Western, in a sense, is the creation myth. It is the myth, because these the myth, in a sense, is that of out westward movement, of kind of this battling nature, battling the Indians, the natives, in which a lot of Westerns, actually the natives are almost portrayed as being a kind of a part of that nature. And it's this individualistic, the individualistic gunslinger who sort of is opposed, who essentially creates a sort of order. A lot of myths really concern this battle between like order and chaos, or achieving a sort of balance between those. So I was looking at it and I was kind of thinking about it one day, and I was like, well, the Western, in a sense, when it really, really works, kind of serves as a sort of national creation myth. And so I wanted to create a thematically themed or thematically linked trilogy that treats the Western in that way. So for the first one, the one that's probably the cheapest to make, it's actually a noir western. It doesn't take place in the 1880s or 1870s like a lot of westerns typically do. It takes place like in the 1940s or 50s, but in like West Texas, and it's kind of like Twin Peaks in a way. It's it's about looking for something that's not there. I guess that's kind of the big thing of it, but it's sort of, I modeled it after Paradise Lost and especially the Orpheus myth. The Orpheus myth is probably the biggest sort of inspiration behind. If you guys know the story of Orpheus, I'll just give it very briefly. There's been several films on it. Jean Cocteau has a really good film about Orpheus. But basically, he was a Greek, he was a lyre player, he was a poet, he was a singer, and he was in love with a, oh, fuck, my brain is dumb right now. Um, my brain is very dumb right now. He was in love with, come on, I should know this. I mean, Black Orpheus. What's Black Orpheus is a good movie, by the way. Orpheus. Let me. Or Orphée in French. Eurydice. Eurydice. Yeah. So he's in love with Eurydice, but Eurydice dies. She goes to Hades, and Orpheus is this charming guy, right? He goes to Hades and he essentially charms his way to get Eurydice and to be able to bring Eurydice back to the world of the living. He's able to bring Eurydice back, but as he's walking out of the underworld, she has to walk a few paces behind him, and he cannot look back. He cannot look back at her. I think they have to walk silently, and she has to walk a few paces behind him. So basically, it's an exercise in trust. And what happens is right at the cusp of getting out of Hades, he looks back at her. He sees her, and she's immediately engulfed back into Hades because he, broke his bond. He did what he wasn't supposed to do, and then he ended up like dying not long after that, and and then they are brought back to Hades. So yeah, so that's kind of the basic, very basic story. Yeah, I think they talk to each other in some ones that I read, and then another one I read, I think they were silent. I don't know. It's based on like verbal sort, it's passed down verbally. So sometimes, some details are a little different. Hack fraud detected. Yeah. I just got to pop my nice polo. Thanks. Yeah. I wear a lot of polos. Well, actually, since moving here, it's just been so hot. I've been wearing a lot of, just regular shirts. Actually, today I went out and I was wearing the Gamer from Mars shirt that said "Drinking, Abuse, and Lies" on it, and I was thinking maybe I just like wear this during the stream, but then I thought, well, having "Drinking, Abuse, and Lies" like right on my chest would probably distract people from the reading, so I'm just so I was just I'll just wear one of my polos. I have a whole like cabinet of polos, various ones, but I also like the button-up shirts. I like those a lot too. It's just when I'm working on a video, I'm usually just working at home, sitting on the couch, and yeah. So I just wear sweatpants, sweatpants and a t-shirt most days. Most days it's just pretty chillax kind of stuff. It's I just I dress up when I have to have people around me or when I'm going on camera. And usually what I'll do too is I'll just like not shave until I have to like shoot something for a video, and then I just have like this really like patchy beard, and then I'm like, oh crap, I gotta shave, and and so I like every time I shoot something, I've always shaved right beforehand, but then I get anxious, right, or I get like nervous that what's gonna happen is I'm gonna accidentally cut myself uh, shaving, and then it's like crap, and then I gotta wait like an hour or something, and try to like hide the cut in some way. Uh, but yeah, usually my go-to fit for when I'm going out is khakis and a polo shirt. Uh, no, I haven't seen the Maya Deren short films. I have seen short films by Kurt Kren, um, and some other of these like experimental artists um, from back in the day. You sound like my dad. Yeah, I sound like a lot of people's dads. I get it, man. I just want to grill. That's just my whole personality, right? I just want to grill. I just want to make YouTube videos. Yeah, I have taken film studies classes. Read. As for what I got out of those film studies classes, in a way, some film studies classes that I took opened my eyes to things, but they didn't open my eyes in ways that something else could open it. And I learned a lot more from my own sort of personal quest for knowledge, in a sense, than I learned from any film studies course. And I didn't like how film studies courses were very, it was like this week we're on this subject and this week we're on that subject. And it felt like at times that they were glossing over some things too quickly, and they were taking too much time on other subjects. I'm not a person that really likes to go by the pace of somebody else. There are some things that I can intake and I can learn very, very quickly, and I'm like, all right, I'm on to the next one, and then sometimes it's just like I understand something or whatever on a surface level, but then it intrigues me so much I just want to dive in deep, and I'll just read tons and tons of books on it. I'll watch like all the movies associated with this, and interviews, and all sorts of stuff. I typically don't watch film YouTubers though, but I try basically to learn primarily through primary sources rather than through like secondary sources. Um, I'd rather hear what the filmmakers have to say than than what anybody else has to say. Did you finish a film degree, rather? No, I did not finish the film degree. I left. I left after my second year. So what happened is I was at Trinity College Dublin, and I was pursuing a degree in film and theology. And I actually liked my theology classes more. And I probably used my theology um, I probably used my theology readings, which is theology, philosophy, sociology. I mean, I had to kind of read a whole bunch of sociologists, and I think that most of the theologists I read were philosophers also. Like there's a big overlap, right? But I learned about like ancient religions, like early Judaism and early Christianity, and I was really into that. I was really into the kind of like the early church type of stuff. And then I got really into like Christian existentialism, like Kierkegaard. I read a lot of Kierkegaard back when I was a teenager, and got into Nietzsche. I actually have warmed up a lot more to Nietzsche as I got older, and I know that he like appeals to like younger people, but I did warm up to Nietzsche a bit. I was definitely like on Team Kierkegaard for a long time. I'm still on Team Kierkegaard, but but I've pursued, I think out of like, as far as reading things, I've probably pursued the theology, philosophy stuff more than I have even the film stuff. Cause I think that actually helps my understanding of films more than like a film book is gonna help me understand things. Because when you can look at things through a theological or philosophical lens, I think you get a much better, much more well-rounded idea on what's being said. But yeah, I'm now currently reading Spengler, The Decline of the West. So, yeah, I've read Baudrillard. I've read Baudrillard, yeah. I've Simulacra and Simulation. I've read some of his essays. I also have read a lot of Camus. And Camus is a guy I really disagree with on a lot of counts, but it is an interesting perspective, I will say. Like I think that Camus is in a sense, he's the most honest of the sort of atheistic, he's not nihilism. He's kind of, it's absurdism, but kind of atheistic existentialists in a way where it's like absurdism is the thing that I guess makes most sense in that sort of, it does make the most sense in that kind of, if you view the world through a certain lens. Baudrillard has a lot of very interesting things to say. I don't even see Baudrillard necessarily as postmodern, but as a commentary on postmodernism. So I do like Baudrillard also quite a lot. Other than Bresson, who are some other good Christian filmmakers? Terrence Malick. Terrence Malick is like the Christian filmmaker. The Tree of Life, you cannot separate Christianity from the Tree of Life. Neither can you separate it from The Thin Red Line. And you could argue basically any of his films. You can't separate religion, Christianity especially, from almost any of his films. You certainly cannot separate it from A Hidden Life, where it's literally about Christianity in the face of totalitarianism. In the face of persecution. That is the ultimate Christian story. His latest film, his latest film, A Hidden Life, is the story of a martyr. Well, it's not. I don't know if he's a canonized martyr, but it is a story about a person who dies for his faith under persecution. John Woo. Yeah, the scene where in Face Off, where Nicolas Cage is walking through the church, and all the doves are coming out behind him. Yeah, I think that Tarkovsky was probably Orthodox Christian. He seemed to, if you didn't believe it, he seemed to at least very much love it. And there are some filmmakers too that they might not necessarily believe in the religion, but they do admire its symbolism and its sort of how it's so just it's like a part of us. It's like it's like it's like this Western sort of binding agent in a sense, so yeah. So even if they don't necessarily believe it, they didn't really even if they necessarily don't believe it, some still like admire it for a lot of other things, and they integrate that into their art. Oh, so is Irreversible the next extreme cinema vid, or is it Martyrs? No, it's Irreversible. Yeah, so actually right after I get off this, I think I'm gonna watch Khan, and then I'm gonna rewatch I Stand Alone, because I'm gonna talk about I Stand Alone in the thing. I watched Irreversible twice yesterday. So I had seen Irreversible before, and that is a movie that sticks with you. It's not a movie you necessarily forget very easily. But I watched it yesterday again, and then I watched it again right after that with a director's commentary to get, Gaspar Noé's sort of commentary on a lot of things. That director's commentary is really great, and that's on the Australian Blu-ray copy of Irreversible. So I watched that twice yesterday, and what I like to do is I like to watch the films a few times, do a lot of reading on them, get like the commentary and kind of like build up a sort of very holistic image of it in my mind. But I also got the book. I also bought the book that they read in there. That's by Dunn. It's on an experiment with time. And supposedly it's not too long. It's like 140 pages, but it's about this kind of, I guess this guy, Dunn, proposed this new way to look at time as like another dimension. And that's definitely a part of Irreversible. So I'm probably going to start writing the script of the Irreversible video today. And I'm going to get that book tomorrow. I'll probably read that and then read that tomorrow, finish writing the script, hopefully have it recorded and everything on Thursday. But what I'm going to do with Irreversible that I only ever did with my Serbian film videos so far is that the problem with Irreversible is that the subject matter is very dark. It's very serious, and a lot of it probably is not going to be allowed by YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make basically 2 different videos. And it'll take me a little bit long, not much longer, honestly not that much longer, but I'm going to make 2 different videos. And one is going to be uncensored, and that is going to be on Patreon, and uncensored not just in the visuals that I add, but also uncensored as far as the words that I say. So for YouTube, there are certain words that if I say them a lot in a video, it's going to get me age restricted basically. And the video is just going to die. And we all know what word that is. Starts with an R. So I'll have to basically put in other words like I do in some of my videos. And this is to like avoid age restrictions, like violation, things like that, right? Attack, maybe sexually assault. That is actually, it could probably fly by YouTube standards. But to me, it just ends up sounding weird. And it's like, I'd rather use very concise language when talking about things. I'd rather use very sort of just like I believe in being as understandable, like as easy to understand as possible. I believe in clarity. I'm not an academic in that sense, because a lot of academics, if you read anything written by an academic, they're writing to basically obscure what they're saying, right? They're not writing for clarity. So my Patreon video will be the video that I want to make, and then the YouTube video will be a sort of censored. I'll shift different words. Or substitute words for other words. Whatever. I don't know. I might mute a word or something like that. And I think too that it also just kind of plays into this thing where if you say these, with some words or whatever, like for example, right, rape, the word. This thing's not monetized, so I don't really care. But that word has with it a lot of sort of emotion behind it. But sexual assault, right, is kind of a dead word in a way. It's a very sort of like it's a descriptor. It's like something that's like on paper, right? It's like that's the technical word of the crime. It's kind of a dead sort of emotionless version of that word. And And I think that that might play better with a larger audience too. Yeah, it's more of a neutral word. I mean, it still is still describing the same thing, but it's just more. It's more neutral. It's not as charged, and but I feel like I'm going to use that probably in my video about irreversible on YouTube, and that might play better with a wider audience. You know, God knows if you say anything slightly controversial or slightly that's not like towing the line, you get a lot of people pissed off. But whatever. I don't care about pissing people off, but I don't want people to be like, I mean, I've had family members who've gone through stuff like this, and so I don't want people to, like go get like flashbacks, right, because of a video I'm making. But I'm trying to be as respectful as possible to the source and to the people watching it, right, and people who have maybe gone through the things that Alex goes through in Irreversible. And it's a tightrope to walk, It's like the video is going to have a very serious tone. There's no way I'm going to be able to do what I did with my Batman video on this. That'd just be so bad. But the thing though is that scene is very charged, and I feel like putting a word like sexual assault on it just takes away from the feeling in that scene, because it's not a neutral thing that just happened. It's not this. It's. I mean, it feels real. It's disturbing. It's just like a nightmare. And so at the same time, it's like, do I respect it more by using more charged words? This is kind of but YouTube won't really allow me to do it. The shocking cinema is always, I stayed away from shocking cinema for, it's a good thing YouTube videos aren't art, so making compromises with the audience really isn't that bad. Yeah, exactly. And that's how I see it, right? It's like my videos aren't art, so it's not like I'm saying like, oh, my art is being compromised. It's like, no, it's not that. My videos are complementary to pieces of art, right? My videos are supposed to I want to enhance people's appreciation of art. I don't want my videos to be art in themselves. I have watched Better Call Saul, but I haven't seen the new season, so don't spoil anything. I've been pretty much spoiled on Twitter. I haven't had any time. Also, I will be watching and doing a review of 2001: A Space Travesty on Izakino this Thursday. 2001: A Space Travesty. How we got a hold of that movie. How we got a hold of that movie was crazy, but we got it. Now that I've finally seen Possession, am I going to do a video on it? Yes, I will. Not only did I see Possession, but Vinegar Syndrome got found, I guess, 50 limited edition copies of the Mondo Possession release, which so Possession released through Mondo a few years ago on Blu-ray, and there were only 2,000 that were released, and they were like numbered. So for a while it was like, it's out of print, you can't get it. I mean, if you want to get it, you can buy it from a guy, like I could buy it from a guy who's selling it for like $160, and it's like, I don't want to pay $160 for a single movie. But Vinegar Syndrome, I guess they found the stock, and one of my subscribers, APR, he alerted me to it, and I immediately pounced on that and got the limited edition Blu-ray of Possession. And the thing is that there's a new 4K restoration of Possession that's out, that's played in cinemas, and I guess is going to come to Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray. later this year. But the transfer of that, the restoration of that is not good. The color correction is weird. The color correction is weird. They made it like really blue. It doesn't look very close to the original film, whereas the restoration that the Mondo edition really uses looks exactly like what the film is intended to look like. It's the best version of the film. It doesn't really matter if the movie's in 4K or if it's in 1080p, if the 4K version has its colors fucked up. You know. Yeah, I've been meaning to watch The Devil, and then I got On the Silver Globe. So I'm going to watch On the Silver Globe maybe this week. I'm meaning to watch it. I just have to make time for making this video on Irreversible, and I'm going to be talking about I Stand Alone in the Irreversible video as well. Probably more through passing. Honestly, if I'm going to talk about I Stand Alone, there's not near as many things to say about I Stand Alone as there is to say about Irreversible. I think Irreversible just has so many things to say. So I think I'm just going to So I think really what I'm just going to say is I'm going to just kind of go over it in passing, and maybe if I get the inspiration, I'll make a video about that a little later on. But I'm going to try to make a video on Possession next month. Yeah, and Climax. Yeah, I talked about Climax in my A24 video. The funny thing is, I knew that video was going to be controversial. I knew it was going to be controversial, and I sort of courted the controversy too. I remember writing it and going, this is going to piss some people off, and I was laughing while I was doing it. So I got exactly what I wanted. Will I be talking about Karn too? And actually, as far as my A24 video being controversial, it's really shouldn't be controversial. I just knew that it would be. Like, I knew it would be, but it really is like PG. It's like it's humor that like this stuff. It's stuff that anybody who doesn't have thin skin should be able to take. Like, Midsummer is mid, okay, and the jokes about Midsummer are all fair game. Yeah, don't watch Possession with poor quality. It's an absolutely beautiful film. The most obscure thing you've ever watched, like a rare film. Oh, I don't know. I've watched some really weird, rare ones that I can't even remember the name of. I watched some weird Brazilian film from the 80s. I can't remember the name of that. I watched a Palestinian film called Wedding in Palestine or something like that. I haven't really heard anyone talk about that. No, a lot of the really rare stuff that I watch usually is not super great. You know, there are some like rare films, like the films of like Angelopoulos, right, that are great, but for some reason they're just rare. But there's plenty of rare movies that are rare because they're not that good. Let me see. I remember I watched this one movie at the Dublin Horror Film Festival, and it was a Jewish horror movie that was like every shot was like way overexposed. I forget the name of it. Like, I watched a whole bunch of movies at like these festivals, right? Like at Slam Dance and Sundance and Berlin, and so there's a whole bunch of movies that just end up that you see that don't even get any sort of distribution. So I don't know, you know, and they kind of didn't make that much of an effect on me. So I kind of like forget they exist, and then, you know, and then I might see it later and I'm like, oh, it's that movie. Yeah, I remember that. Like, one that I saw at Sundance, which is basically just an ad for this BDSM club, was called The Blackout Experiments. I remember I really did not like it. and but it was like 19 degrees outside. Uh, it was like 19 degrees outside, and it's so cold, and I knew the bus wasn't going to be there, so if I wanted to walk out of it, I would have to be like just standing outside in the cold for like 30 minutes. I was like, well, it's warm in here, so I might as well just sit in the theater here and finish the movie. Um, so I just sat in the theater, and it happened to me. It just violated me. um, yeah, let me see here. You know what? You don't have to watch I Stand Alone before watching my video. Here, wait a second. I kind of find it funny. The the boxing of I Stand Alone, where it's just like, see here, it's like, warning. Viewers are advised that this film contains scenes of graphic sex and violence. I Stand Alone. Strand Releasing presents a, and it's got the French flag here. It's just the guy with the gun to his head. It's just really trying to make you like go like, oh man, oh man. The problem with this release is that this DVD is from 2001, and it's in like 480p. It's the quality is not that good, unfortunately. It's a pretty like because it's in like this super widescreen that he shot it in, but it's in a box. So for my video, I'm gonna have to like expand it. But the digital transfer for this DVD is not very good. But you can't get a Blu-ray of it. There hasn't been like another transfer of it as far as I know. So it is what it is. I'm just glad that I'm able to actually watch it. That it's not totally lost, and that as I have this DVD, it won't be totally lost. If it is totally lost, you can find it on Cargara or whatever. I don't know. Everyone keeps asking me to watch Brat. Brat, yeah. I'm gonna watch join the Kino and Mumke and Gay Cowboy BDSM movie. That's right. That's right. 2001, a DVD release travesty. Yeah, so Mumke got copies of 2001, A Space Travesty, and he just sent me a copy. So I'm going to watch that tonight, maybe. I'm going to watch that tonight, although my boss is going on Timcast, so I might have to tune into Timcast for the first time in my life. Yeah, so I don't know. But I think I would rather watch 2001: A Space Travesty. And but first I have to watch Karn, and I always thought it was Kane, but he will wear a beanie. I met him on Friday, and he was wearing a beanie. And it took a lot of effort on my part to not rub the beanie. But yeah, he was just going on about Rumble or this, Rumble that, telling me I needed to make a Rumble account. I don't want to make a Rumble account. I'm sorry. Like, my audience is like 18 to 35, politically kind of neutral. Rumble is like for people who are like over 40 and conservative. It's not my audience at all. I have Odyssey as a backup, and I like Odyssey a lot. I like a lot of the features in Odyssey as far as like an alternate platform. But Rumble is I'm not interested in Rumble. And then he was saying that he probably spends more money on Rumble than he makes. And he was like, well, every like young creator needs to like make a Rumble account. And then he says that he actually doesn't make any money from it. And then I asked him, well, what are you going to tell a young creator who's just starting off? And you say, don't make a YouTube account, make a Rumble account. I'm like, um, I'm like, how are they going to like make a living off of creating content? Because, you know, it's like, I got to pay bills, right? Everyone else has to pay bills. And then he was just like, well, YouTube can just delete your channel overnight. I go, yeah, but Rumble, you don't make anything. So what's the point? Like, you don't make any money. You don't get compensated or anything. So what's the point? Odyssey's doing a lot of stuff to make, to make things better behind the scenes. But it is going to be, a slow road, right? And really kind of what I like to see, or my sort of ideal vision of the internet, is that we don't feel like we're beholden to any one website. That I'm not a YouTuber, but as a creator, in a sense, well, hopefully, I do YouTube for maybe a few years, and then I go back into making movies, and then I don't have to worry about any of that. But where it's like, I like to see where I have videos on all these different sites, because I know that there's people who enjoy my content who, for political or moral or ethical reasons or whatever, they don't want to use YouTube. They don't want to use Google. So I put it on Odyssey for them to watch, because it really for a person who creates videos like me or like any of my friends, it's really about just getting out to the largest number of people as possible. And, so that's just kind of how I see it. But Rumble is definitely not my audience. I'm not a boomer conservative, that's doing political grifting. I'm not going to name names, but some YouTubers who do like to do that, who do love the grift. I'm not going to name any names. They're fine. They're not affecting me. Let me see here. Look what you've done, Susan. Have you seen? You're not a boomer conservative. He's not literally me. My channel's not even political. I like to talk about sociological issues. My politics are always all over the place. It's like, if I actually was to try to like go into my politics, it would just confuse people, because it's always changing. It's always changing based on new perspectives or things like that. I don't really set myself down any like ideological standard. 47 Dreams. My political ideology changes depending on who I'm trolling. Yeah, that also is it, right? Like, I love playing devil's advocate for people, so I'll just like, if I'm talking, like, sometimes I'll just like come across as like way extreme one thing or the other, and I don't even believe in what I'm saying. I'm just using it to troll somebody. But I also, but I think that maybe not making my channel a political one is a sort of extreme or political act, in a sense, in that every fucking film, like YouTuber or critique analysis, has to be like looking at this through this, blank on blank-ist lens or something like that. They tie things that are not political into politics. I don't mind talking about a film's political messaging if that political messaging is definitely a part of that movie. But it's this whole culture now of projecting your own politics onto literally everything, and it's just cringe. And I mean, and everyone does it. And so I just try to say, like, what I like to look for in movies is not whatever political messaging there may or may not be. I mean, if it's important to the film, to the themes, and to the stories, sure, we got to talk about it, right? If we're going to talk about the movie. But I think what a lot of movies try to do, a lot of good movies at least, um, is that a lot of good movies is that they try to go for some more like a universalist things that will themes that transcend time, right? That usually when you engage in politics, it's very sort of the day. But when you kind of try to find some sort of universal truth, it is just as relevant the day that it's made as it is 100 or 200 years from that day. So I try to look for something that's more universal, that's something that's more human, philosophical, theological, whatever other equals or whatever, whatever other descriptors you want to use. Rather than the political, because I think that we have enough of that. I think a lot of times, politics is more of an expression than it is the root of something. So I try to look at the root. You recently added the brown bunny in your Letterboxd top 4. That's correct. Could you expand on your choices on that? Thoughts? Yeah, I fucking cried for 2 hours after watching the brown bunny. It devastated me. That movie is. The thing is that I can't even say that I've been in a similar situation. I can't even say that I've been in a similar situation as Gallows' character as a Bud. I keep thinking Billy Brown, but that's been Buffalo 66. I'm thinking Bud. I can't even say I've been in a similar situation to him. But the sense of loneliness and of longing, of regret, but this sort of it's this regret panged with a sweet sense of happiness and melancholy. I mean, it's such a emotionally complex movie. I don't think any film has really come close to really kind of showing those emotions on screen, and it does so in a very understated way, which is the way that you really need to show stuff like that. And I didn't think that the pornographic scene was in excess. And yeah, that ending. Like you're watching it and you're kind of wondering like when it's going to come together, and you're feeling this loneliness with him, and the whole long driving shots is there to basically place you in that situation. I've been in that situation too. Driving across the country, being completely lonely, like having all these sort of thoughts in my head driving from Florida to California. I've done that a few times, and it really kind of places you in that mindset. And it's a film that you have to just. It's a film that is amazing when you just immerse yourself in it, and you allow yourself to really empathize with Bud. And he tries to find solace in these other women, but it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work. I mean, I think that a lot of guys, maybe my age, I'm about to turn 28. A lot of guys my age-ish have kind of sought that, in loneliness, right? Where you feel extremely lonely and you try to find solace in another person, especially another woman for men. And all that it really does, even if there's some kind of physical or even connection that's maybe above physical, that's metaphysical in a sense, it's spiritual or mental or something like that, it still leaves you empty and it is this idea, right? And it's an idea that I definitely really resonates with me, is like you have that one love in a sense, right? You have like this one great love. And now I'm a romantic. I'm a romantic, although I tried not being one, but I tried not being one for a while. And but you know, I always go back to being a romantic. But it's like you have this one love, right? And when that's gone, it's like your heart has been ripped out of you, and you no longer can give any love to anybody else. And it's just like a part of your soul is gone, and this is a vital part of your soul. And the brown bunny really kind of gets to that emotion, and it's very effective at it. Um, when I say romantic, I don't necessarily mean that you're good at buying girls flowers or whatever on dates. It's more of a state of mind, a state of looking at love, I guess. A state of looking at the world, you know? It's like it's like you want your life to be poetry. You don't want it to be, you don't want your life to feel like a cheap novel, but like it was written by Pushkin or something, you know? Or it's something in a Tolstoy. You know, you want it like, you want there to be these like passions and I don't know, things like that, I guess. And it's a hindrance. I will say that it's a hindrance, but I can't change the way that I think. Um, you kind of are striving for these emotions. I mean, it is irrational, but people are irrational. But yeah, not as in like crazy. Like I'm not gonna do anything crazy. uh, yeah, I'm gonna do a video on both Buffalo 66 and the Brown Bunny. Uh, because actually somebody has done a video on the Brown Bunny. One of my friends, a very long time subscriber of my channel. His name is Wolfgang, and he did a video on the Brown Bunny a couple of years ago. He's Portuguese. I don't think he has made any other. He made like 2 or 3 YouTube videos. I think one about like American Psycho and one about the Brown Bunny. And I don't think he kind of stopped making videos, I think, because of college. I tried encouraging him to make some more videos. But I tried encouraging him to make more videos, but you know, life gets in the way. I get it. But yeah, he did make a video on the Brown Bunny. I definitely plan on doing that. I'm gonna do like a double feature of. I kind of want to do a big thing on Vincent Gallo because just as a character, he's a very interesting personality. But yeah, very interesting personality that will have. Okay, time for me to be a Janny. All right, here we go. Hide user on this channel. And Buffalo 66 is kind of an antithesis in a way to the Brown Bunny. So I think doing like a side-by-side analysis of them in a video will be interesting. It's like going from like it's the white pill and the black pill. You know, damn bots. Yeah, you know, I don't get these bots, right? Like, do people actually click on the links? Like, do people actually believe these things? You know, I don't know. Maybe they're in some sort of altered state of mind, mix of maybe drunkenness and horniness or whatever, and maybe they just are really dumb. Yo, Schuler, what's up? Hey guys, everyone say hi to the Schuler in the chat. Schuler makes a lot of the music for my videos. So he made like the music to my Batman video and to my Blade Runner video. And and to my Salo video. Yeah, he didn't release Promises Written in Water, unfortunately. And he won't let anyone watch it. I kind of want to I kind of want to try to find a copy of Promises Written in Water, but he pretty actively takes down any kind of copies of it online. So you don't do it for free. What kind of What kind of currency is that? What kind of gamer Rick? What's that currency there? I'm gonna copy that and it's the shekel sign. Thanks for the shekels. Thanks for the shekels, gamer Rick. Good, good, good. Yeah, aka Gamer Bucks. Isn't that what Mr. Medicare likes? He likes getting the shekels. So does Seth Talk. But anyways, guys, I think I have to take a business call pretty soon. I gotta take a business call pretty soon. Uh, so I'm gonna head out in about 5 to 10 minutes, and my Shkreli shekels. Thanks for the Shkreli shekels. Uh, I'm gonna So if you guys have any last like questions or whatever, yeah. So anyways, I just want to say I'm gonna be doing a video on possession. Oh, this one last thing. Okay, one last thing to talk about to get you guys maybe thinking to see if you want to have any kind of input on it. Would this be a series that you guys would be interested in seeing? Okay, and it's a series like so. Obviously, I earlier this year I tried out this thing called the Kino Files, right? And it kind of didn't really pan out. These like 3 to 5 minute videos. I think I only made two, and they didn't really get picked up or anything because they're about movies that really kind of no one knows about. Like, I mean, people know about it, but it's like whatever. And I just didn't want to do like these analyses of movies that like nobody's seen, right? Because then no one's gonna want to watch the videos because it's an analysis of like movies that they haven't seen, right? You don't want to spoil it for yourself, anything like that. Like I totally get that. So I was like, well, what if I make these like short videos, right? Where I just what if I make these short videos where I just like recommend these movies that people might not have heard of, and I kind of show them that way, right? More hot girls, in the chat. And it didn't pan out. It kind of died. But I want to kind of resurrect it. I want to resurrect it, but in this way. Okay. So instead of doing like a 3 to 5 minute long video or like a series of 3 to 5 minute long videos, what if I do like an omnibus type video, right? And make that a series. And maybe I can make it like a monthly series, right? Called 10 obscure movies you need to watch. Like volume 1, and then the next month it'll be volume 2, and then volume 3, and whatever. And include obscure-ish movies or whatever. And in the video, and in the video, I'll be like recommending like 10 movies that I just don't see a lot of people talking about. That I think like are really cool movies that I just kind of want to direct people towards. And it won't be as like deep as like my other things. Like it's not going to be as deep as like the Blade Runner video. What does it mean to be human? Like how are we human? How do we know that we're even real? Like these kind of Cartesian questions, I'm not going to be like having like this existentialist moment in the video going like death is the only thing that binds us. Like I mean I know that like I said that in my my Blade Runner video that basically our binding factor is that we all die. And I mean that's true, but it's like this I'm not going to be basically giving people existential crises with these videos. But like what if I had a video where it's like, hey, here's like 10 just like movies that I don't see many people talking about that are really cool. Like for example, I think in my first one I want to like bring up The Cremator, Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion, The Human Condition. I mean, and like they're not obscure to me, but I'm sure that they're obscure to I'm sure that they're obscure to a lot of people who maybe are just getting into film. Who are, they might want to check out. I mean, and maybe I'll add on the Silver Globe or things like that. And then of course I'm going to try to find, with each of these, try to find legal ways for people to find these movies on horror films or something. Yeah, I could have a different theme for each one. Monthly series, it continues the concept of breaking a limited number list into different videos. Yeah, I'm not going to be breaking it into different videos. That's the thing, right? I'm not going to be breaking it into different videos. It's going to be like, here's a 30-minute long video, right? And in it, I talk about 10 movies, and I just kind of give the descriptors, why I like it, why these movies work, why people should watch it if they're getting into it. Like, for example, I mean, almost nobody that I know that likes films has really seen many films by Maurice Pialat, right? Like À nos amours, L'enfance nue, and Graduate First, and Under the Son of Satan, all great movies. So it's like, okay, so maybe with each one I'll do different movies, but and I'll just kind of change it up a lot, different movies from different time periods, different genres, and have it all so that maybe somebody watches one video, right? And there's one movie in particular that really stands out to them. Maybe do 5 movies instead of 10. Yeah, maybe. I think what I'll do is I'll start writing it. I'll make like a list. I'll start writing it and then see how long it is. But I think that like 10 would be about a 30-minute long video, and I now have a guy who will edit for me, so he can help me with maybe editing like half of it, or kind of taking some of the load off of me. So I might be able to put out like a 30-minute long video. Yeah. So yeah, I can have varying list lengths. Yeah, I mean it's all up to me, right? I've been doing the like I've been doing like the Literally Me series, but the thing with me is that if I do the same thing kind of like over and over again, I then just go like, I get sick of it, right? I just get sick of it. I just go, I want to do something new. That's why it's like, so I had several Literally Me videos, and now I want to do some shocking cinema stuff. And I'll go back and I'll do like a female Literally Me with Possession this next month. And then after that, I'll do the 10 movie thing. And I know that I did promise to do American Psycho. I'm honestly, the hardest thing about doing the American Psycho video is, how do I make a video on American Psycho that's basically not been made so far? Because it's like, it's one of those movies that's just like everybody knows. And I have to find, I don't want my video to basically be like, oh, that's just like this other guy's video on this. Oh, that's just like that other guy's video on this. It's like, I want it to be my video on it. And I feel like I'm not really adding to anything, right? If I make a video that's just like somebody else's, and and then it's like, what's the point of making that when you could go watch somebody else say the exact same things that I said? So that's the hardest thing for me with American Psycho, is just finding an angle that works for me. But I will make the video. I have ideas on how to do it. But yeah, I will make the video. Yeah, so I'm gonna change it up. I'm gonna try to do this series. Really, too, if I'm gonna be like completely honest with everyone here, getting into this, pretend it's a shit movie. You'll be doing something different. Yeah, I have the email address of the cinematographer of that, so maybe I'll reach out to him. I'll reach out to him. Maybe I can just get like an interview with him and talk about the behind the scenes stuff of the movie. He might be down. I'll reach out to him. But I can't know that if he's going to respond or anything like that. But anyways, so yeah, so basically that's what it's going to be like. I just 69 erotic dramas in February. Yeah, maybe in February I'll do like 10 romance films you need to see or something like that. And um, I'll try to pick like, it'll be Possession, Shamanka, um, just be like whatever the weirdest, like fucked up romance movies I can think of would be. But yeah, yeah, no, basically what it's like is this Literally Me series is really fun to do, but it's also kind of I'm pulling from like a pretty like limited pool of movies. And I know that at some point that pool is going to kind of run out. And also, it's like I want to talk about movies that are outside this pool of films, which is like Fight Club and Nightcrawler, American Psycho, and these Donnie Darko and things like that. So I want to pull from movies that are outside this pool. I also understand that I don't want to like basically blow my load on this series early on. Um, I don't want to blow my load early on the series early on, and then basically not have any kind of carrot or whatever to dangle, and be like it's just like I just run through it. I just like milk it dry, and then it's over. I don't want to do that. I'd rather kind of build up a lot of different series and kind of make things that appeal to a lot of different people. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of the goal. But yeah, I'll give 5 minutes and then I'm gonna head out. Phantom Thread. That's a good movie. There was a movie recently that kind of reminded me of Phantom Thread that I saw. I forget which. Actually, you know what movie I saw recently I really liked was Petite Maman. I know everyone was telling me it was a 2021 movie, but it released here in 2022, so I'm considering it a 2022 film. So far that's one of my favorites of this year. The Northman would be one of my other favorites. One of my top 5 movies. That's a really hard question, and it changes all the time. The Tree of Life is probably my favorite movie. Underneath that is L'Argent, possibly. Decalogue. I would like to say Decalogue, but it's like 10 movies in one. So if I was to go with like Kieślowski, I would go with probably Three Colors Red. Um, and then, gosh, I don't know, man. I really don't know. Maybe The Truman Show, and Harakiri, possibly. I don't know. Like it all depends. It all depends, really. Um, the stream is making it real hard not to overpay for a copy of Possession, dude. It's awesome. It's awesome. Possession's real awesome. Um, but like also, I mean, I'm also think of like films like Antichrist is definitely up there. Um, Mirror, like it changes all the time, and it honestly depends on my mood. Like the 400 Blows, A Nos Amours, uh, Irreversible. I mean, Irreversible is one of my favorite movies. Pickpocket. I'm just looking at my my Blu-ray collection over here. Um, I mean, Another Round is one of my favorites, and I loved Worst Person in the World. That's definitely made its way. Ikaru, um, Throne of Blood. Gosh, yeah, The Human Condition. Sallow, yeah, Sallow. Teorema, uh, Eight and a Half. I mean, a lot of Fellini. Roma, The Great Beauty. Um, Gosh, I don't know, man. That's a really difficult. It's really difficult. Um, so many good movies. Blue Velvet, Eraserhead, Mulholland Drive. Like I love David Lynch. I love Kubrick. I mean, I know I'm kind of just every time someone asks me that, it's just like it's kind of like Le Samurai, Le Cercle Rouge, like the works of Melville, the works of Renoir, the works of um, Zero de Conduit, uh, Zero for Conduct, which is yeah, it's just like when you ask like what's your favorite movie or what's your like top favorite movies, right? It's like I then start to like process like every movie that I've ever seen, right? And it's just like air overload. It's just like does not compute, you know. Plenty of Bergman stuff is in there. And also In the Mood for Love and 2046. I love. Um, yeah, so Tarkovsky, um, Bellatar, Lars von Trier, Wim Wenders, Werner Herzog. Looking over there, like a lot of Martin Scorsese movies, I'd probably say are some of my favorites, like Raging Bull, The King of Comedy, Taxi Driver, um, uh, Apocalypse Now. I love Apocalypse Now. I love a lot of Coppola stuff. Apocalypse Now, The Conversation, The Godfather 1 and 2, Rumblefish, you know, like Edward Yang. Yeah, I love A Brighter Summer's Day. I mean, there's so many good movies. Like, that's the thing, is that I'm glad it actually is very inspiring that so many good films could be made. So many good movies can be made. Um, and I fall in love way too easily. I fall in love way too easily with movies, I think. Um, Andrei Rublev is another one of my favorites, as you can probably see. Um, and, but it's kind of like, yeah, I can love a lot of movies. If you look at it, like you go back in time, right? It's like you love a couple films from each year, but that ends up becoming quite a lot. I honestly just like letting, I mean, I would walk into with other pieces of art, I'm not as critical as I am with movies, but me being a filmmaker, me looking at things critically has made it so that I love movies more than I did before. My love for film has only heightened, if I'm going to be honest. Whereas maybe I think I was more critical before I really got into it in a weird way. And in some ways, I'm way more critical now, and maybe I hate some things more or whatever. Maybe it's just sort of, it's like maybe before I was more like the wave was kind of like this, and now it's sort of like this. The highs are higher, the lows are lower. But anyways, guys, it's been a nice stream. I'm gonna leave this up and then edit it probably down like tomorrow or something. So I'm gonna edit it to just the reading tomorrow, but I'll leave this VOD up for the night in case any of you guys want to like go back and listen or archive it or whatever. So anyways, I hope you all have a very good evening, and see you all soon.